Welcome back. Today is finally time to do what has been our ostensible goal for pretty much the entire game and reach the castle. However, before we do that, we do have a couple of loose ends to pick up. I also have a couple of ladders to mistake. I'm actually wearing the flying feline boots that we bought from Shellcore last time, mostly because they look silly. But the reduced falling damage is also nice. Now that we have found the right ladder, we can go and use that forgotten key we picked up in the Black Gulch. You might recall that there were two other doors with a similar pattern to the one that we found the weird old guy in a wheelchair in. There's one in the pit in Majula, and there was one further down in the gutter. Our reward here is fairly handsome. We've got 3 different metal chests, none of them mimics. We pick up another copy of the Soul Vortex spell. The Witch Tree Branch and the Witch Tree Bellvine, which are fairly powerful magical catalysts. And the Great Lightning Spear Miracle. Now, we are not really focused enough on magic to use any of this, but it's never bad to have these things on hand, just in case we want to invest in that later. Now, while our next target is in the gutter, it's actually going to be a lot faster just to go back up to the bonfire and warp to it. For lack of anything better to talk about at the moment, you'll notice how, as I speed climb up the ladder, I'm not letting my stamina bar hit 0. If you are sprinting, speed climbing, or any other action that really requires stamina to move faster, if you let the bar hit 0 while you're doing it, you won't be able to sprint or speed climb again until it fully fills back up again. However, if you sort of do it in bursts, there isn't a limit to how many times you can do it if you just manage the regen well. If that makes sense. I'm not sure I explained it very well. At any rate, our visit to the gutter won't take long. The final secret is mercifully close to the bonfire. The partisan is just a really strong weapon. It will lose a little bit of effectiveness in the upcoming area, just due to armor types and damage resistances, but as far as thrusting weapons go, it's probably one of the best in the game. Good golly. Well, it was worth a try. I'll get that spell to work one day. Far more effective is just to use a wide sweeping attack, like, say, the Partisan Strong, and just sort of bust your way through. Our reward is Havel's set. Leave none standing. That's my policy. Now, Havel's set. Havel's set is probably the strongest set of defensive heavy armor in the game. It offers just completely bonkers protection and poise. However, in exchange, it's upgraded with Twinkling Titanite, And it's really, really heavy. The only heavier set of armor I can think of would probably be the Ironclad set. Now, to go to our real destination, we need to head back to the Ruined Fork. You may recall that door we ran into earlier that was also getting on our case for not having mighty enough souls. With the souls of all 4 great old ones, we can now pass. Now, as you can see, decked out in this, what is basically a giant boulder hewn into armor, we are very well protected, but we're also very, very encumbered, up to about 98%. The approach to the castle can be a little grueling depending on your luck, so I decided to take some utility miracles with me like heal. Magic weapon is always useful. To reach our destination, we need to go down to this area again where we fought the second Flexile sentry. Now, despite the fact that we just got, by all rights, pretty much clobbered there, we're still in pretty good health and we hardly flinched at all. That is definitely the power of Havel's armor. I would say that it's probably not viable to use against stronger bosses and enemies simply because dodging is so important. But if for some reason you find yourself with an enormous amount of equip load, if you can still roll normally while wearing it, there's no reason not to. Though that requires a lot of investment in vitality. When you're over the 70% equip rate, you move a little bit slower, and your stamina recovers a little bit slower too. And you certainly can't make this terrifying jump. So much trouble could have been avoided if Hal was just willing to let the armor get a little dirty and clamber over. But here we are, several million souls later. I forgot to equip a catalyst for magic weapon, and now we're even heavier. You can actually go a little bit over the 100% load and not be completely immobilized. But, you know, you've got about, I would say, another 20% before you start just staggering around everywhere. Either way, I would not recommend going up that high in terms of equip load unless you really, really think you need to. This is another DLC area. I'm just taking a quick detour here because the warp point to this area is sort of far removed from a bonfire. The one we found after the Rotten is actually really nearby to the Hidden Chamber bonfire down there, so I didn't feel the need to go and hit the bonfire. Bonfire, bonfire, bonfire. So many bonfires. This imposing looking place is Eliam Lois. However, we won't be exploring it until a bit later. I just want the warp point available. Very pretty, though. I'm not even sure it's still in Drangleic. Wherever it is looks pretty far to the north. Broom Tower, which we visited briefly earlier, looks like it's pretty squarely in the Iron King's domain. But this could be anywhere. Forgive me, sometimes I get turned around when I come back out of that teleport. The correct way is this way. If we take this detour, we pop out right on the other side of that impassable pile of rubble. The repair sorcery is actually really useful for sort of generalists that rely on utility magic. It doesn't require a lot of intelligence to use, and having basically a free and unlimited set of repair powder is super useful. I mean, you have to refresh it at bonfires, of course, but repair powders can get expensive, and you want to have them on you. This is the game's final Haid Knight. I'm not quite sure how he got over here, but this spell is fucking crap. Okay, let's just poke him. Now, he doesn't use a spear, he uses a sword, much like the first one, back in Forest of Fallen Giants. He didn't prove too much of a challenge because Havel's set is actually really effective against enemies like that, who attack quickly instead of sort of slowly but powerfully. We actually just managed to Estus Flask heal right through his attacks. He drops the Haid Lance. The Haid Lance is actually a really unique weapon. It's the only Haid weapon that requires Twinkling Titanite to upgrade. However, it's really heavy, so I think I'm just going to have to go back to what we were wearing before we put on Havel's set. Lances are essentially the ultra greatsword version of spears. They're slower, and their movesets are less versatile, but they pack a huge punch. And they also do a lot of poise damage. The Haid Lance is probably the lightest of all of these, and it has a fairly, how do I say, it's not really a unique moveset, but it's a weapon that offers a lot of power for its weight. The weather seems to have taken a turn for the inclement, and we now run into some more Royal Swordsmen, which we found all the way back in Lost Bastille. These guys are a little tougher. The lance is actually very strong against them, provided you don't just swing at nothing. This configuration of enemies can actually be fairly difficult, especially if you're not accustomed to using a shield. The two soldiers up top that shoot arrows at you while you deal with the one down below is actually a pretty nasty combination. However, with this lance-shield combination, we were able to fairly effectively take out the one below while protecting ourselves from the arrows. Now there's an impressive sight. And there's a crystal lizard. I take it back, the lance is awful. The Emerald Herald has come an awfully long way from her usual haunt.
This castle is isolated. But nonetheless, you must forge on. To bring an end to your journey and mine.
We will explore Castle Drangleic another time. For now, I think I'm gonna take a bit of a rest and enjoy the view. And let that castle know who's boss. It's the castle, by the way. It's definitely the castle.